In a universe where the rule of the strong is absolute, survival depends on one simple truth. Power and control are everything. It's a truth that shapes every life, every action, every moment. And for Arena, an alien assassin of unmatched skill, it's a truth that's been ingrained in her very being. Born and bred for one purpose, eliminate targets without hesitation or mercy, she has never known a life outside the cold, emotionless realm of assassination. Her existence is a carefully constructed machine, designed to be as efficient and lethal as possible. Feelings are a weakness, attachments are dangerous, and love. It doesn't exist in her world. Arena has spent years training her mind and body to be nothing but a weapon. Her homeworld raised her to be a flawless killer, and the galaxy's underworld knows her by reputation. No one escapes the strike of her blade. Whether in the depths of an alien fortress or a crowded city, she's always in control. She takes what she wants, but never gives. Love, connection, vulnerability. These are luxuries she could never afford. They're not part of the equation in her line of work, and she has never allowed herself to even consider them. But then, everything changes when she crosses paths with Charlie. He's just a human. Nothing extraordinary, at least at first glance. He doesn't have the physical power or intelligence that most of the people Arena encounters do. But there's something in his eyes, something in the way he looks at her, that shakes the foundation of everything she's ever known. The first time their gazes meet, it's as if the universe shifts, breaking apart the controlled life she's so carefully maintained. She can't explain it, doesn't want to. He shouldn't matter. Yet, in that fleeting moment, the hunger she's buried deep within her stirs. Charlie isn't afraid of her.
That in itself is a rarity. Most people cower in fear at the mention of her name. Charlie looked as if he sees through the assassin's mask, and that gaze, it unnerves. He isn't looking at the assassin.
He's looking at her. The woman who's been hiding beneath the ruthless killer. For the first time, Arena is forced to face a reality she's long avoided, the hunger for something more than survival. As much as she wants to shut him out, as much as she tries to distance herself, the pull between them is undeniable. Her carefully built walls begin to crack. And what she doesn't know, what she can't predict, is that Charlie's presence will unravel her in ways she can't even imagine. His touch, his gaze, it's all starting to peel away the cold layers of indifference she so desperately clung to. For the first time, Arena realizes something terrifying. Maybe, just maybe, she's not as invincible as she thought. Maybe, just maybe, the human might have the power to destroy her. In a world where power and control are everything, Charlie is the one thing that could bring Arena to her knees, and she has no idea how to fight it. Arena has spent her life mastering control. Every breath, every movement, every thought has been carefully calibrated to serve a single purpose: survival. As an assassin, emotions are dangerous. Every feeling, every connection, every crack in the cold armor she's built could be exploited, could be her undoing. Love is a weakness, desire is a distraction, attachment is an illusion. These are the rules she has lived by, the only truths she knows in a world where power and control are paramount. And yet, with every passing moment in Charlie's presence, those rules begin to shatter. It starts subtly, an unexpected flutter in her chest. When he looks at her, the slight heat rising in her skin when his touch brushes against hers. It's so small at first, so insignificant, that she convinces herself it's nothing. After all, she's faced down entire armies and emerged victorious. What could one human possibly do to her? She's an assassin, trained to eliminate targets, without hesitation. Her mind is a steel trap, and her heart, it has no place in her calculations. But the more she tries to shut him out, the more those small, uncontrollable sensations grow. His gaze follows her like a force of nature, steady and unyielding. When they speak, his voice, low and warm, stirs something in her that she can't quite name. It's not fear, not the instinctual response she's so used to. It's desire, craving, the kind of hunger she's spent years suppressing. A hunger for something more than just survival, something more than just control. Irina tries to bury it, to dismiss it as weakness, but the harder she fights it, the stronger it becomes. It gnaws at the edges of her resolve until every thought seems to circle back to him. She tries to remind herself of the mission. There's always a mission, always something to focus on, but Charlie keeps creeping into her mind, into her body, in ways she can't escape. She's never felt anything like this before. His touch, his presence, seem to awaken something deep inside her, something primal and raw that she's been denying for so long. It's terrifying. For a woman who has never been vulnerable, who has never allowed herself to feel anything other than cold calculation. This is uncharted territory. The assassin in her is screaming for control, for distance. She's always been the one in charge, always the one pulling the strings. But with Charlie, for the first time, she doesn't feel like she's in control. She feels lost. Every time he's near, every time their paths cross, it's like she's unraveling at the seams. The thoughts, the need for him, are too powerful to ignore. She tries to retreat into her familiar world of violence and detachment. But Charlie has already made himself a part of her in a way she never thought possible. And that terrifies her. She can feel it now, this growing pull toward him, this magnetic connection that she doesn't understand. The assassin inside her whispers that she should cut ties, walk away before she becomes too attached, too weak. But there's a part of her, a desperate part, that craves the very thing she's been taught to avoid. Irina is caught in a storm, a war between who she's always been and who she's terrified she might become. Can she maintain the control she's fought so hard to keep? Or will the pull of desire and the human who's ignited it be her undoing? It was supposed to be a routine mission, a simple extraction, in, out, no complications. Irina had taken hundreds of assignments just like this one, finding a target, eliminating them with precision, and leaving without a trace. But as she stood in the shadows, watching Charlie from afar for the first time, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. He didn't look like much. Just a man, alone in a crowded street, going about his day as if nothing in the universe was trying to kill him. But that was the thing that stood out. He didn't seem to care. Everyone else in the bustling city kept their distance from her, eyes lowered, faces turned away. But not Charlie. When his gaze met hers for the first time, it was like a sudden jolt of electricity, a shock that shot straight through her body. His eyes were warm, curious even, as if he were looking at her for something more than the cold assassin she had become. He didn't flinch, he didn't run, and that, more than anything else, drew her in. Irina knew what she was, what she had to be. She was the shadow in the dark, the silent death that never left a mark. But Charlie's presence was unsettling, the way his gaze locked on hers like it could see right through her. There was no fear, no hesitation, just curiosity. And for reasons she couldn't explain, that curiosity tugged at her, pulling her closer. She wasn't supposed to feel this. She wasn't supposed to notice it. But his stare lingered, and for a brief, fleeting moment, she felt something stir deep within her. Something she hadn't allowed herself to acknowledge in years. Desire. The warmth of it coiled in her stomach like a snake, unsettling and dangerous. This was a mistake, she thought, her mind racing. She had a mission. She had to stay focused, stay detached. But Charlie was different. They exchanged a few words, innocent at first, simple pleasantries that Irina barely heard, her mind too clouded by the strange pull of his presence. She watched his lips move, felt the vibrations of his voice in the air, and found herself strangely entranced by the sound. She had never paid attention to the tone of a voice before, but with him, everything felt heightened. She was hyper-aware of every shift in the air, every inch of space between them. Her pulse quickened, and her body seemed to react against her will. Is something wrong? His voice was deep, with an underlying warmth that sent a shiver down her spine. There was an unspoken question in his words, an invitation to be something more than the cold, distant assassin she had trained herself to be. And for the first time in her life, Irina wanted to take that invitation. Her instincts screamed at her to walk away, to erase any trace of her presence from his life. She had been trained to disappear, to leave no mark on the world. But here, in this moment, Charlie's gaze was like a beacon, pulling her closer despite herself. Irina's heart beat faster than it ever had on any mission. It wasn't fear. It was something else, something unfamiliar, something she had buried so deep that she'd forgotten it even existed. The assassin within her fought against the stirring emotions, trying to maintain control. But there was no escaping this. Not with him. Charlie didn't seem to understand the danger. He smiled at her, completely unaware of the battle that raged inside her. He stepped closer, and her body tensed, ready to react. But when he reached out to gently touch her arm, the sensation of his fingers on her skin was like a spark that ignited the fuse inside her. 1,000 thoughts ran through Irina's mind at once. This isn't right. I need to get away. He's a weakness. He'll destroy me. But with that touch, something deep inside her stirred. There was no turning back now. The walls Irina had built for years started to crumble, piece by piece, as she faced a very different kind of danger, one that could tear her apart in ways she had never prepared for. The moment Irina had feared had finally arrived. Her carefully constructed world, built on years of discipline and emotional detachment, was starting to unravel. Every step, every decision she made to push Charlie away only seemed to draw him closer, pulling her into an orbit she didn't understand, didn't want. But in the end, it wasn't just Charlie that she was fighting. It was herself, the cold, calculating assassin that had always prided herself on control, and the woman inside her who longed for something she had spent her life suppressing. It began when she found herself standing in the dim light of his apartment, her breath shallow, her pulse quickening with every passing second. The walls felt tighter here, the air thicker, charged with an electricity that hummed between them. Irina had never allowed herself to be in a place like this, vulnerable, open to someone else. But somehow, in his presence, it felt impossible to resist. Charlie stood a few feet away, his eyes never leaving hers. The warmth of his gaze sent a ripple through her, something dangerous, something that burned like a fire she didn't know how to extinguish. His voice broke the silence, low and quiet, as though he knew what was happening, as though he could feel the shift in the air. "You don't have to keep pretending," he said softly, stepping closer. Irina's breath hitched, a tremor running through her body as he moved. His proximity was intoxicating, like a force she couldn't fight, like gravity pulling her into him. Every instinct told her to step back, to remain distant. She had lived through countless battles, faced death without flinching. But this was unlike anything she had ever experienced. "I'm not pretending," Irina replied, but even to her own ears, the words felt hollow, forced. She wanted to believe it, but deep down she knew the truth. She was pretending to be something she wasn't. She was pretending that she didn't want him. Pretending that she could keep him at arm's length. Charlie smiled, a knowing look flashing across his face. "You're lying, Irina." His voice was gentle, but it carried a quiet power that made her chest tighten. I can see it in your eyes. I can feel it. His words struck deep, stirring something inside her that had always been locked away. For the first time, she felt seen, truly seen, not as the assassin, not as the weapon she had been trained to be, but as someone human, someone with needs, desires, vulnerabilities. She stepped back, needing space, but he followed her. His hand reached out, brushing her arm, the touch light but electrifying. It wasn't just a simple touch, it was a claim on her body, her heart, her soul. And as his fingers lingered on her skin, Irina felt her defenses crumble. Every wall she had spent years building, every barrier she had carefully constructed, started to fall apart. I can't do this, she whispered, though the words felt empty, more like a plea than a declaration. She couldn't keep fighting him. She couldn't keep fighting herself. The truth was undeniable now, something she could no longer ignore. Charlie's expression softened, his hand gently cupping her face as he leaned in, his breath warm against her skin. You don't have to fight anymore, Irina. Not with me. You don't have to be alone. His words were a balm to a wound she had never allowed herself to acknowledge. In that moment, Irina felt the weight of everything she had kept buried for so long. Her loneliness, her fear, her longing. And it was too much to carry anymore. Her breath caught in her throat as he closed the distance between them, his lips brushing against hers in a tentative kiss. At first it was gentle, almost hesitant, as if he were waiting for her to pull away. But she didn't. She didn't pull away. And when she didn't, Charlie deepened the kiss, his hands sliding down to her waist, pulling her closer. Irina's body responded against her will, her hands moving to his chest, pressing him closer as she surrendered to the overwhelming need that had taken over her. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, a wild, frantic rhythm that matched the surge of emotions coursing through her. This was the surrender she had been trying to avoid. The surrender not just to him, but to everything she had buried inside herself. In that moment, all the control she had fought so hard to maintain, all the armor she had built around her heart, shattered. The assassin, the cold, detached killer, was gone. In her place stood a woman, vulnerable and hungry, caught between fear and desire, torn between the mission and the man who had managed to breach her defenses. And for the first time in her life, Irina allowed herself to feel everything. The aftermath of surrender was never easy, and for Irina, it was even more complicated. She had let herself fall into Charlie's arms, and now the reality of what she had done, the emotional and physical connection she had allowed to bloom, pressed down on her like a heavy weight. It wasn't supposed to be like this. She wasn't supposed to feel anything. She wasn't supposed to be human. In the silence that followed, Irina lay next to Charlie, her chest rising and falling with every breath, but her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Her assassin's instincts told her to leave, to disappear before the mission became too complicated, before he became more of a liability than a reason for her to stay. But Charlie, he, was still beside her, his arm draped over her waist, his breath steady against her skin. And as much as she fought it, her body responded to his presence in ways she didn't understand. It wasn't just physical. It was deeper. A hunger she couldn't control, one that gnawed at her with a relentless intensity. She had always believed that keeping people at arm's length was the key to survival. But now, in the quiet aftermath of their encounter, Irina was faced with a truth she couldn't ignore. She wanted him, she needed him, but she couldn't afford the luxury of need. Her chest tightened, a knot forming deep inside her as she pulled away from Charlie, the absence of his warmth leaving a cold, aching emptiness in its place. Her instincts screamed at her to get up, to leave the bed, to escape before it was too late, before she became so entangled in him that she couldn't get out. Charlie stirred beside her, his eyes fluttering open. His gaze immediately sought hers, confusion flickering in his eyes as he sat up, propping himself up on one elbow. The vulnerability in his expression was clear, but it was also something Irina had never allowed herself to fully grasp. He was as invested in this connection as she was. "Irina," he whispered, his voice thick with concern, his hand reaching out to her. "What's wrong?" Her breath hitched, and she quickly turned her head, focusing on the ceiling as though the answer was written there. But it wasn't. There was no easy explanation for what was happening. She was falling for him. And that was something she could not allow. A relationship like this, born out of vulnerability and emotional chaos, was a dangerous liability. For him as much as for her. "I can't." She forced the words out, though they tasted like ash in her mouth. "I can't stay." This was a mistake. Charlie's hand froze on the air between them, his face hardening with disbelief. His voice was softer this time, his words laced with a quiet pain that cut through her more deeply than she cared to admit. "A mistake? Irina, don't tell me that. We both know this isn't a mistake." She turned her gaze to him, her heart pounding as she searched his face for any hint of deception. There was none. He was as earnest as ever, as real as ever, and that was exactly what terrified her. She had been trained to kill, to suppress, to erase every trace of humanity that could get in the way of the mission. But Charlie had found a way to bypass all of that. He had found a way to see her, not just as the cold killer, but as a woman, fragile, complex, desirable. "I can't be with you," she said, her voice low but resolute. "You don't understand. This isn't just about us. I'm not like you. I'm not human." The words stung, even as she said them, because they weren't just a defense mechanism. They were the cold truth. She couldn't afford to lose herself in him. It was too dangerous. Charlie remained silent for a moment, and in that silence, Irina could hear the echoes of her own fear, her own self-doubt. But when he finally spoke, his voice was steady, unwavering. "I know what you are. I know you're not like me," he said, his gaze locking onto hers with an intensity that sent a shiver through her. "But that doesn't change how I feel. You're more than just an assassin, Irina. You're more than just what you've been trained to be. I see you, I feel you, and I don't care what you've done in the past. I don't care what you've become. I care about who you are now." Irina recoiled, but not from his words. His words pierced her, unraveling the cold exterior she had spent years building. She wanted to shut him out, to push him away, but something deep inside her reached for him, something that she couldn't explain or control. "You don't understand," she whispered, a quiet desperation creeping into her voice. "You can't understand what it's like to live in the shadows, to trust no one, to be nothing but a weapon." Charlie reached for her again, his hand gentle but firm as he pulled her back toward him. She resisted at first, but his grip softened, and she found herself leaning into him, her body betraying her resolve. "I do understand," he murmured. "I understand more than you think. I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be with me. Can't you see? We're both broken, Irina, but together, maybe we don't have to be." The weight of his words settled in her chest like a heavy stone, and for the first time in her life, Irina wasn't sure which part of her she was supposed to listen to. The assassin, who demanded distance and control, or the woman who longed for something more, something that could finally make her feel alive. The days after the emotional confrontation between Irina and Charlie were a whirlwind of confusion and tension. Irina had left the safety of his embrace, but the emotional scars she had inflicted upon herself by pushing him away were far deeper than she cared to admit. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, those eyes full of pain, full of something she wasn't sure she deserved. And the worst part? She wanted to feel that pain. She wanted to feel him again, even though every part of her screamed that it was too dangerous, too reckless. Charlie, for his part, had pulled back, just enough to give her space, but never enough to give up on them. He was always there, his presence a constant undercurrent of warmth and understanding, even when she tried to run from it. But Irina was no stranger to running. It was her instinct. It was all she knew. But every time she tried to focus on her mission, to lose herself in the cold, calculating mindset that had served her so well for so long, she found herself thinking of him, of Charlie. A man who had managed to see past her hardened exterior and into the vulnerable woman she had long buried. A man who made her feel things she had never allowed herself to feel. Things she didn't know if she could control. The hunger, the desire, that ache that refused to go away, it was all-consuming. She couldn't ignore it, no matter how hard she tried. And it wasn't just the physical attraction, the undeniable pull she felt every time their bodies were near each other. It was the emotional connection. It was the way his touch had awakened something deep inside her, something she couldn't define, but something that made her want to fight for it, even if it terrified her. But she couldn't afford to be weak. She couldn't afford to lose herself in this strange, human emotion that had begun to take root inside her. The stakes were too high. The mission was too important. And yet, the more she tried to bury her feelings, the stronger they became. Then, the fateful day arrived, one that would either break them apart or pull them closer than they had ever been before. Irina had been assigned to a mission that required precision, secrecy, and speed. A simple job. But the second she set foot on the battlefield, everything changed. In the chaos of the fight, in the thick of the violence and destruction, Irina found herself surrounded, cut off from her team. Her usual calm composure faltered for a moment, her thoughts spiraling out of control, as if something deep within her had cracked. It was in that moment, when she had been outnumbered and the odds seemed impossible, that she felt the familiar presence of Charlie in the distance, the sharp scent of his resolve, the heat of his focus. He had come for her, just as he had promised. Despite the danger, despite everything, he had come to fight for her. Charlie was with her, side by side, as they cut through the enemy forces. He wasn't the trained killer she was, but his resolve was unmatched. He fought with a kind of fierce determination that made her heart race, and with every movement, every calculated strike, he proved that he wasn't just fighting for the mission either. He was fighting for her. The battle raged on, but Irina's focus was on him, on the way he moved, the way he fought, the way his eyes never left her even in the heat of the chaos. It was a beautiful, dangerous dance, and in the midst of it all, something shifted. The raw hunger she had been ignoring flared into an inferno. She realized then, with undeniable clarity, that she wasn't just fighting for survival. She was fighting for something far more terrifying, for something she had never allowed herself to want: love. As the last of the enemy forces fell, silence washed over the battlefield. The mission was complete. They had won. But as Irina stood amidst the carnage, her body trembling with the adrenaline of the fight, she felt something else. A shift. A crack in the armor she had built around herself. Charlie approached her slowly. His gaze locked on hers, his breath coming in short, sharp gasps. He didn't speak at first, just moved closer, the intensity in his eyes unmistakable. His touch was gentle, yet the urgency in his movement spoke volumes. "You're not going to push me away again, Irina," he said, his voice a low, gravelly whisper. "Not after this. Not after everything we've been through." For a moment, Irina just stared at him, her heart thundering in her chest. The walls she had so carefully constructed around herself were crumbling, falling away piece by piece with every word he spoke, with every glance he cast her way. "I'm not trying to push you away," she whispered back, her voice trembling. "I'm scared, Charlie. I'm terrified that if I let myself feel this, if I let myself love you, it will destroy me." Charlie stepped closer, his hand cupping her cheek, and for the first time, she didn't pull away. He leaned in, his lips brushing against her ear. As he whispered, You don't have to be afraid of love, Irina. You don't have to be afraid of us. We'll figure this out together. No more running, no more hiding. And in that moment, as his lips pressed against hers, Irina realized that she had been fighting the wrong battle. She wasn't just an assassin anymore. She was a woman who had finally found something worth living for, and this time she was ready to fight for it.